I'm wearing my glasses so I can see. Once your hands are up, and we throw to the audience, stand up, say as loud as you can, project your voice, your question, and I'll repeat it on the microphone, okay? Are you guys ready? Because we're not only here to talk about Doctor Who, we're here to talk about the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. The longest running, most watched sci-fi series in the world, and who better to celebrate with us than the 6th Doctor, Colin Baker! Well, welcome to Fan Expo.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know what? It's all about me today. Just kidding. I'm going to give this to you.
That's a good idea.
And I can do as much.
How are you all? My name's Colin. What's yours? Come on, my name's Colin. What's yours? Right, I heard Mary there, so you are now all called Mary. I'm Mary. What a lot of you there are. Shall we count? 1, 2, 3. That'll fill the hour, won't it? See what you've done to me. At the end of 2.5 days here, I'm on the Red Bull.
Well,
You're exhausting but lovely. I'm enjoying Canada enormously. It's my first ever convention here in Canada. I've been here once before. I did a film in Montreal about 7 or 8 years ago with Emmanuel Béard, if you know who I mean. Yes, called Les Trois Mousquetaires. And I spent about a week in Montreal, and that's the only other time I've been to Canada. So this has been fantastic, because everyone said to me, you will love Toronto. And I have. And I have. Like, all I've seen is an airport, a hotel, and a convention centre. But like anywhere, it's the people that matter. So thank you for making me so welcome.
you were one of the main witnesses to see this, Guinness World Record, this attempt to break into the largest gathering of Daleks. What was it like being surrounded by all these Daleks?
Well, I have met a few Daleks before. I've never met such a variety of Daleks before. I've small Daleks, big Daleks, real Daleks, pretty Daleks, even pretty Daleks.
That was a good time.
No, it was a special event, and I've now got 2 world records. Does it count that I was there? Do I have a world record too?
Yes, I think
for
so.
being there, because I did a program in Australia for British television called "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here," and we all had to have a go at breaking a world record. And I broke the world record for telling the most jokes in 10 minutes. So I'm quite proud of that. So now I've got the most jokes in 10 minutes and the most Daleks gathered in one place.
Yeah.
And goodness, CGI doesn't count. Otherwise you wouldn't have a chance, would you?
Well, today, all year we're talking about the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, but this is actually the 30th anniversary of when you first appeared on Doctor Who's Maxwell the Guard. The Arc of Infinity. I've heard, though, that you were a little bit hesitant about taking that role.
That's very true. Actually, I think it's the 32nd. Because I played Max at 81, 82-ish.
Okay.
So I started
Over
doing...
30 years.
Yeah, so it's longer than 30 years. Yes, I was slightly hesitant because my agent rang me up and said, would you like to play the part of a guard in Doctor Who? And I said, oh, must I? And he said, why? I said, well, I'd always read that they only cast the Doctor from people who had not been in the programme before. And my agent, he's still my agent amazingly, said, well, they're not going to ask you to play Doctor Who, are they? Which I thought didn't show showed a lot of confidence in his actor. And the dates worked out perfectly. It was 3 episodes with Peter Davison, and I thought, oh well, I might as well. And isn't it lucky that I did? Because as a result of doing that, I met John Nathan Turner, who was then the producer, who found my performance as Maxwell the Guard so striking that he felt obliged to say to me, in the old days when we did television, we used to rehearse it like a play. So you rehearsed the whole thing, then you went into a studio for a day and a half and blitzed it. Nowadays, of course, you do it scene by scene, it's quite different. But back then, they used to rehearse it all, and then the producer would come and watch a dry run of the whole thing. And at the end of it, he came in to me and said, are you under the impression that this programme is called Maxwell the Guard? And I said, no. He said, what do you think it's called? I said, Doctor Who. And he said, would you mind letting Peter have some of the screen? Because I was, it's always struck me that nobody is an extra in their own life. You are all the leading person in your own life, aren't you? You're sitting there surrounded by other people, but this is your place you're in. And I thought Maxwell felt the same. Why should he be respectful to this doctor person? So we had a laugh about that, and he asked me to tone it down a little bit and to allow Peter some acting room, and I generously allowed Peter to do his acting as the doctor. And then a few months later they asked me if I'd like to play the part. So it goes to show, doesn't it, that take every opportunity. Never occurred to me for a second that would happen. But a few months later, John invited me to come and have lunch with him, and even then it didn't occur to me that he was going to offer the part. But I think I might be the only doctor who never even had to do a screening test. Wow. I was just offered it, which was quite nice.
How the Sixth Doctor was portrayed, that we were seeing a different Doctor than we saw with Peter.
Yes, well, I mean, for very obvious reasons. Tom Baker had been a very forceful, high-energy, dominant Doctor, so they made the decision to have the next Doctor and his regeneration. He was kind of shattered by regenerating and was carried by his 3 companions. We needed 3. I managed with one, didn't I? For several episodes, Peter was kind of, weakened by his regeneration, and he was a kind of sweet, young, preppy kind of guy. So at the end of his term, they opted for a contrast. And what greater contrast can you have than a vainglorious, dominant, multicoloured buffoon? Perhaps I'm exaggerating slightly on the buffoon bit, but the plan was to offer a doctor that people might go, wow, that's not my doctor. He was very brave. And they asked me if I was up for it, and I said yes, because I thought I would have plenty of time to win everybody over. It's a bit like my favourite character in fiction is the character of Darcy in Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, for 9/10 of that book, we all hate him. But he is the only really principled person in the story. But he doesn't feel the need to ingratiate himself with others. And I liked that as a kind of template for my doctor. That he did what was right, and he cared passionately about things, but didn't always feel necessary to indulge in the niceties of polite human behaviour. So it was brave and perhaps foolhardy, but I went along with it. Thank goodness for the Big Finish audios. I don't know. Well, some of you obviously are aware of them, but he gave my doctor the chance to show how I would have developed had I been allowed to. Thank you. And I did a story recently with myself, with the just regenerated doctor, doing a story with the doctor several years later. And it was quite interesting how easy it was to differentiate them. So if you ever get a chance to listen to a Big Finish story called The Wrong Doctor, it's really, I was quite proud of it, because I thought it might be quite difficult to be myself in 2 different ways. But listening to it, I think I actually got away with it.
Yeah.
So listen to it if you get a chance. It was great fun.
Well, and I think audiences obviously and listeners agree with that as well, because you were, voted by fans as the best Doctor through these audio plays.
I know, yes. After years of languishing at the bottom of the polls. Why is it Marvel Comics? I mean, I love Marvel Comics, and the doyen of Marvel Comics is here this weekend. But the Marvel Comics who published Doctor Who magazine insist on having your favourite Doctor's leg, your favourite companion's ear. They're polls, and I think polls are divisive and upsetting. Well, they are, if you come last. They recently had one for your favourite and least favourite story, and I was privileged to be in both the best and the worst. The best was Caves of Androsani, very good ending. And I think it was the ending that did it for me, because that's when Peter finally shuffled off and I took over. And I think it was because of the Caves of Androsani story. It was voted the best. And then the next one was mine, Twin Dilemma, and that was the worst apparently. So there you are. So I'm not a great fan of polls.
Well, we're a big fan of you guys out there. I know you guys have tons of questions, so put your hand up if you have a question. And, okay, in the red shirt. Yep. Do you mind standing up, just projecting a little bit?
Looking back, how do you feel how the writers put you from strangling Perry Brown so more relieved that she was alive, so proud?
I heard the first half.
Sorry, do you mind repeating it one more time?
How do you feel
From strangling Perry Brown to
being relieved that she was somewhat alive after the trial of Time Lord, because she was supposed to be died?
Oh, the end of Perry. Yes, this is a very thorny one. If you're not very familiar with my storylines, you might find this a bit troubling. I did a season called Trial of a Time Lord. In that season, there was a story called Mind Warp, where my doctor was subjected to a brain-damaging machine. And during that story, I virtually tortured Perry. And when I got the script, I said to the script editor, hang on a minute, did this really happen? Because there were three possibilities. Because it was being used as evidence in my trial. So they showed this on the screen, and was it a lie, and I'd never done it, or was it I was pretending to do it to save Perry's life, or was it the third option, which was the brain machine had really affected me, and I didn't know what was going on? Because you couldn't tell from the script. And the script editor said, I don't know, you'll have to ask the writer, Philip Martin. So I asked Philip Martin, and he said, I don't know, the script editor put that bit in. So I made my own decision on it. I talked to the producer, and he said, how do you want to play it? I said, I will play it as if the whole thing is a lie. It's tainted evidence from the Matrix. Pay attention. I said it was complicated. So I played it full out because it was a lie. But it was quite difficult for some of the audience to understand that. And given the fact that my doctor had already strangled her in the first episode after his regeneration, it kind of left a taste in everyone's mouth that the Sixth Doctor was violent and unpleasant. But in fact, he wasn't. So there.
There you go.
A well-dressed boy.
That looks familiar.
Mr. Baker, you got a favorite audio you did?
Favorite audio? It's very difficult, you know, because it's a bit like being, as I've said when people say to me today, what's your favourite picture? It's like saying, who's your favourite daughter? You know, because you look at one and think, oh, I like her as well, and I like her. I've got 4 daughters. So, favourite audio, if I name one, and then 5 minutes later somebody will mention another one, I go, oh, I like that one too. But there were 1 or 2 that I remember that I really liked. There was one I did with Evelyn, and it was quite a romantic one, really. Now, what's it called? See, I've told a lot of names of stories, but it was one of Evelyn's last ones, and it was called... Thank you very much. I should know that. If I go to a convention, there's always someone who knows more than I do. Arrangements for War. And it was the scene at the end with the young lovers meeting on the bridge with Evelyn. It was just, I thought, very poignant. And I liked that. But I like all the ones I do with Davros. Davros, for me, is an underused character. Well, I love Davros. And there's one story I did with him where in a future society the world needs someone to run the whole of commerce, and they think, who is the most ruthless individual? Ah, Davros! So they release him from whatever prison he was in at the time and hire him with my help to run the world, and he, well, I won't ruin the story, but it looks like he's actually working on the side of the good guys. Looks like. And given the fact that the Master seems to have faded somewhat since the good days of Roger Delgado and Anthony Henley, so that's one choice the new series made that I can see why, and I thought the actor concerned, whose name temporarily escapes me, did a really good job of it. But to make the Master such a raving homicidal maniac, insane, undercuts completely what the Master is about, which is an equal rival to the Doctor, who is clever, who is smooth, who is devious, and just to come across as Hannibal Lecter with Hannibal Lecter's got homicidal tendencies. I thought missed the point a bit, but that's just me.
Okay, so, right there. Yeah, you got it.
The two series that you did were very different. The first series being kind of a standard Doctor Who, several stories with parts. And then your second one was probably the Time Lord with an overarching story. If you had continued as the Doctor on TV, which kind of style of writing would you have preferred in your series? A kind of overarching arc or just a group of standalone series?
I like each story being a standalone, mainly because I think there are viewers out there who feel if there's an overarching story they've missed an episode, there's no point in shooting back in. So if they know that what they're watching is a standalone story, they're more likely to watch it. I mean, that's a simple practical matter. But having said that, the new series has had all those, clever ideas with threads running through the whole thing, and people seem to have hung on to it. But I mean, the point that you make is the best possible one, that the most important thing is the writing. Without excellent writers, no series is going to last forever. And I have to say that for me, the writing, since it's come back, has been outstanding. And I know there are, and that's because a lot of the writers were fans back in the 80s when I was doing it. People like Mark Gatiss, I knew him. I knew him when he was a fan hanging around at the BBC, getting in everyone's way. Well, hello, Doctor. And now he's, A, a very good actor, and B, a very good writer. And, there were several of them like that have, really done brilliant stories. And I know that a lot of fans, they surprise me by saying that they prefer the classic series, because I think the new stuff, with all its timey-wiminess, is tapping into the kind of thing that I loved when I watched, some of you may have heard of Sapphire and Steel, a series back in the 70s, which really delved into paradox and the extraordinary things that could happen if you could tamper with, however many dimensions we have. And I love it when I don't know what's going on. Now, some people want to know what's going on and want to have an explanation. I loved Twin Peaks, for instance, because you didn't have a clue what was going on, but it was gripping stuff. And other series like Heroes, which I thought was a great series, where the ground shifted all the time. You know, when Silo was a good guy, or a bad guy, or a good guy, or a bad guy. And that's what I think life is about. Life is more, there's more grey than black or white in life. And I like it when art, television, writing reflects that too.
Fantastic. Great. Oh, yep, Vicky with plaid shirt. And his bow tie.
Hello, bow tie.
What was one of the hardest parts of filming Doctor Who?
The hardest parts of filming are learning the lines. It's always learning the lines. It's the most mundane and awful thing to say. It's, you know, the day-to-day stuff of doing it is fine. You know, sitting around waiting for hours it can be trying because it's not a glamorous job to do. You sit there waiting for hours while they get the lights right, and then they shout at you and say, "Get on the set quickly before the light goes," and you get the blame if it goes wrong after waiting there for 3 hours. But it's just some people are very quick at learning lines. My wife, who gave up acting when we had children, she could read it and know it. For me, it's always been a slog. That's why I love Big Finish. I don't have to learn it. It's wonderful. But the trouble is, once I know it forever. I can, actually, no, I can't quote from Doctor Who now, but there are some bits I'm still quite familiar with.
What was the atmosphere like that first season that you were the Sixth Doctor and being, you know, that role?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that everyone said, "Weren't you nervous when you went onto the set for the first time?" And you know, I wasn't. It was bizarre. Because in the past, I had been in lots of other series where I was either sharing the feature roles, or I certainly wasn't the leading man. And this was the first time I'd ever been the leading man. And the part had been offered to me. I didn't have to beg for it or plead. And that was strangely empowering. So I was on the set on the first day going, "Right, let's get on with this. This is great. Hello, everybody. I'm Colin." And I just had a ball. I had the best 3 years as a professional actor. Because when you go into somebody else's series, they create the working atmosphere. And it may surprise you to learn that not all actors are that friendly and sharing. Some of them are very jealous of their position and may even not be interested in talking to you if you're not playing a significant role. That does happen in this business. I'm sure it doesn't happen over here or in America. But it does happen. And I was determined that that was not going to happen when I was playing the Doctor. I think you could ask anyone who's on the show that I made sure everyone felt they were part of it. And I think that's so important. How do you do good work if people are a bit nervous about, saying the wrong thing to you and upsetting you? Because you might go and sit in your Winnebago for hours and sulk because they put the wrong apples in there. I did hear of a leading actor in a series who refused to come out because they had left the label stuck to his apple when he bit into it. And he said he couldn't possibly work that day. I won't name him. That's not my kind of actor.
Well, thank you for not being that kind of actor.
Out of all the villains that you have faced as the Doctor, which one would you say is the most frightening and why?
Michael Grade, who was controller of BBC One, who axed Doctor Who when I was halfway through doing it, and then a year later ordered a replacement of the Doctor, which made Sylvester McCoy appear. However, there's one thing I have to share with you, because I know you can keep a secret. Sylvester McCoy is allegedly the 7th Doctor. Did I appear in the regeneration scene? No. Therefore, I have not regenerated. Therefore, Sylvester McCoy is the imposter. surviving original Doctor. Which means I have been the Doctor for 30 years. Which beats all the records. Are you my army? Will you march with me? Love ya!
Okay, with the top hat.
As we get closer to the 50th anniversary, something that has been happening at cons with doctors have been the reading of speeches from Doctor Who as of different doctors. So I was wondering if you could read a speech by the Doctor from a recent episode as the Sixth Doctor.
By all means. If I like it. So the rings of Lacarton was which Doctor? Oh, Matt. Oh, Matt's good. I like Matt. So this is actually the Sixth Doctor, is it? Okay then. I'll tell you a story. Can you hear them? All these people who've lived in terror of you and your judgment. All these people whose ancestors devoted themselves, sacrificed themselves to you. Can you hear them singing? Oh, you like to think you're a god, but you're not a god. You're just a parasite eaten out with jealousy and envy and longing for the lives of others. You feed on them, on the memory of love and loss and birth and death and joy and sorrow. So come on then, take my memories. But I hope you've got a big appetite, because I have lived a long life and I have seen a few things. I walked away from the last great time war. I marked the passing of the Time Lords. I saw the birth of the universe, and I watched as time ran out, moment by moment, until nothing remained. No time, no space, just me. I walked in universes where the laws of physics were devised by the mind of a madman. I've watched universes freeze and creations burn. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. I have lost things you will never understand. And I know things. Secrets that must never be told. Knowledge that must never be spoken. Knowledge that will make parasite gods blaze. So come on then. Take it. Take it all, baby. Have it. You have it all. How did he do it? I don't think I've seen that one. It's a good speech.
That's amazing. That's the first time you're seeing that.
Did they kill him? Wow. Well, I watched that episode. Oh, I never had speeches that long to learn. Well, the poor bloke.
They're singing it, they like it. Anybody else? Okay, yeah, over there. Black hat.
Hey, I have to say you're my doctor.
Hey! You're my fan.
We're up with you and everything, but how was it working with the second doctor? How was it working?
Oh, working with Patrick Troughton, lovely. He was always my favourite Doctor, because Patrick Troughton did the hard job. The job that I wouldn't be sitting, you'd all be sitting here going, why are we in this room if it wasn't for Patrick Troughton? Because someone, and it's lost in the mist of time who it was, said, hey, why don't we have this thing called regeneration? So when a doctor says, actually I want to go do something else now, 3 years of doctoring, I wanted to go and be in another program. But the program doesn't end. We can get another doctor to take his place. And in the wrong hands, that could have been the end of the programme, because he made it work. He was a wonderful, talented character actor. And I was lucky enough to know him separately, because in my first 4 or 5 years as an actor, I shared a flat with his son, David Troughton, who you'll probably know from Peladon and whatever those other ones are. Young David and I was his best man when he got married, and so I met Patrick then. So I knew Patrick, but not as an actor. Excuse me. So to work with him was fantastic, because he was very kind. Because I think were I ever to work with a younger actor, it might not occur to me. I might think, well, they probably don't need me to say I think they're good. But Patrick felt he could say that and was kind about my performance, which I quite liked. And it was very generous, because some of the doctors are a bit kind of mock envious of each other, shall we say. I mean, we're all good friends, but there is a certain amount of friendly rivalry. But Patrick was very spontaneous and very generous. And we got to film the only decent foreign filming I ever did in Seville, in Spain. And we had a problem because the wig's makeup got lost and apparently got sent to Stockholm or somewhere. And so we had 2 days in Seville, in a rather nice hotel with a swimming pool and a bar. And Patrick and Nicola Bryant and myself and Fraser Hines sat by the pool and had a few drinks while they got the makeup and wardrobe sorted. So it's hell being an actor, And I had to play this stupid game in the swimming pool called Doctors and Companions, where the doctor stands in the pool and the companion sits on his shoulders and you wrestle. I had Nicola Bryant on my shoulders. Poor old Patrick and Fraser Hines. I won.
Okay, yeah, right there. Oh, okay, so so we'll go right to you right after, okay? So who's the one that just had their question? Repeat one more time, yeah? Oh, yeah. Your thoughts on Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor.
Oh! I think it's an excellent choice. Anyone who's seen him in the series that he's best known for might be a little nervous to think of it, which is a political series where he plays a kind of unscrupulous backstage manipulator in the political world, and where his language is, well, there are some English words in between the expletives. Will actually find it rather odd that he's been cast, but I've seen him in loads of stuff, and he has the right feel for it. What I like about it is we've got a grown-up again. When they cast Matt Smith, I thought, oh gosh, he looks 12. But of course, he looks 12 going on 900. Because, I thought it was phenomenal, because he was ageless and old and young and middle-aged all at once, and wonderfully kind of random and exciting. So the age was irrelevant in that case. And of course, having had David Tennant, who got 1 million girls watching, he's also a very fine actor, but he certainly, I would say that the programme was watched predominantly by males in Britain until David Tennant came along. And to a certain extent, Crystal Eccleston before him. Until then, the doctors have been older. But Peter Capaldi is the same age as William Hartnell was when he started. Now, if you look at pictures of William Hartnell, you realise how ageing has changed in 50 years. What we thought of as old when I was young, I would think of myself as dead. When I was 18, looking at someone of my age. Now, you've got to be 90 before you look that old. It's a tribute to healthy eating and exercise, an awful lot of pills. So we have Peter Capaldi, who looks 20 years younger than William Hartnell did. And I am only excited and looking forward to seeing what he does, because I think it will, having that kind of senior authority will do something for the role of the Doctor to take it in a new direction, which will be exciting. And the one thing that I haven't cared for about the new Doctor is all this lovey-dovey nonsense. All this snogging in the TARDIS. You know, kissy-missy, huggy-wugger. That is not the Doctor. I'm sorry. He's outside all that. No hanky-panky in the TARDIS. That was a rule of John Nathan Turner's, and I subscribe to it.
Oh, yep. Let me go back over there. I promise, turn the light.
You were robbed.
I'm sorry.
It had better be good.
Pressure's on.
What's the best thing about my TARDIS? Well, you have to bear in mind that I have to deal with actuality, not fiction, right? So there were several TARDISes. There was the set, which was the interior of the TARDIS, which I do have a great affection for. Clean, simple lines, none of this kind of organic stuff everywhere. I mean, I think the TARDIS is very good now, and it's very different and complicated. But I liked my old-fashioned TARDIS interior. The exterior is what it was, and always is. We had a lightweight one, which we took on location, so if the TARDIS had to land on a mountain, it was made of fiberglass, and usually you had to kind of peg it down, because otherwise it would blow away. But the awful thing about that was, and I apologise for sharing this with you, but to decipher the truth, when you're miles from anywhere filming with a large film crew, and they have nowhere to go to be private, the interior of the TARDIS, which had no floor, so it was open to the ground. Okay, I'll leave that thought with you, and then I'll say, Nicola Bryant and I often had to rush in there and close the door, and then count to 5 or 10 while they locked off the shot so you could do the dematerialisation. And we used to run in there, and hold our breaths, and someone said you could come out because it didn't smell very nice. The glamour of showbiz. Don't you wish you'd been there?
Yes, right there.
During your time as the Sixth Doctor, what was the most difficult performance that you had to undertake?
I suppose the trickiest one was in the last couple of episodes of Trial of a Time Lord, where we were filming on a beach, and it was supposed to be in Mr. Popplewick's domain, which was a kind of fantasy, the rules of time and space don't apply place. And there was a scene where I had to appear from the sand of a beach, upwards like that, talking to the Valeyard. And the way they filmed it, they dug a huge pit and filled it with water. They had a hydraulic lift inside it. Then they covered that with floating cork, which they covered with sand. So it looked like the beach. And then I had to stand on the platform, so I looked as if I was standing on the beach. And I had to learn the line phonetically backwards. I can't remember what the line was now. But as I sank into the water, and a frogman was in the tank to hold my feet, otherwise I would float it back up. So as soon as it got below my ankles, they grabbed hold of my legs. And I said the line backwards. So I came out looking dry, and it sounded pretty good actually. I really managed to get it right. But it was a very unpleasant feeling, being slowly lowered into a tank full of freezing water and having to stay under, it was only about 10 or 20 seconds, but when you're in the Doctor Who costume, and we had to do that I think 3 times before we got it. Then I had 4 versions of the costume. So we were running out when they finally, and it's never the actor, it's always the lighting or the camera or the sound didn't get it. And that was tricky in terms of the, the logistics of doing it. But you get a great sense of pride when it kind of works out. And I think the other one was in Margaret Rani, strapped to the top of that trolley as it rolled down the hill, because that was entirely genuine. I was strapped on top of the trolley, which was rolling down the hill. In the bottom of the trolley, there was a props guy who, they were ordinary casters. He had a bit of wood and was shoving them to make them go in the right direction. So if it had tumbled over, I would be in big trouble. But I'm a great believer in people being good at their job, and I trust people. Like when I get into an aeroplane, I'm never nervous because, well, the pilot, it doesn't want to die either, so I'm sure you'll make sure that I don't. Now, touch wood, it's been lucky so far. Oh dear, that's dangerous, isn't it?
Speaking of snorting,
Were we, darling? What would look like? Time head. What's a time head? A time head. H-E-A-D. It's an extraordinary expression. I'm struggling to even come up with anything for that. I'm sure somebody else wiser than me will understand that question, but I'm afraid I don't understand it. Everything but the head. Why would everything be? I don't get it. If a mummy and a daddy have a baby, the whole thing is a mixture of the mummy and the daddy, not just the head. That would be well weird. I think someone needs to have a little talk to you. Hi, I love you. I'd like to have a head with you. Hey! Well, I suspect all of them because you can't not be. I was influenced by all the ones before me. I suspect that probably Christopher Eccleston did his own thing, and I don't think he'd have been influenced much, but he might have been. And I know David was a great fan of the programme and had watched all of it. So the whole thing about being influenced is that it's not necessarily conscious. That I found myself taking on various Hartnell things without thinking about it. I was doing that sometimes as a kind of echo of Hartnell. Because over the years I'd seen lots of Doctor Who, and you kind of absorb things without knowing about them. Some people have said Matt Smith had elements of my Doctor. Which I'm flattered by, if it's the case. But everyone does their own. I think every actor has the ability to play the Doctor. Some would be a 5-minute Doctor, and others would be a 10-year Doctor. Most of them turn out to be about a 3-year Doctor, it seems, apart from Tom. Now, I'm one of the people, in a minority, I do understand, who finds it hard to believe that out of 12 regenerations, they should all be white men. I was about to say white straight men, but I suppose as soon as Jack Harkness came on the scene, certain bits of that changed. Yeah, who? Which actress? Now that's interesting.
I know a lot of people are talking about Tilda Swinton.
Is she British?
That's actually a really good question. Hey, is she British?
New Zealand.
Scottish?
She's Scottish, is she? I didn't know that. She'd be good. I think of lots, and I can't think of one at the moment. Judi Dench. She's wonderful in every way. What about who?
Black Doctor.
Why not? But Judi Dench is not black. She's white. Oh, they were talking about Patterson Joseph before. I think a black doctor would be fantastic. I don't know why they won't do it. There might be something to do with the cost of making the little figures might cost more for the paint. I don't know. The BBC's mean. I think the trouble is that they do thousands of polls, and polls will always come out with the same old. And I think someone's got to be brave and do something different. Personally. My favourite villain? Well, I change that answer every time I'm asked it because I get bored hearing myself say the same thing, really. So I think this time I'll say Davros. Because I did a wonderful story with Davros, Revelation of the Daleks, and Terry Malloy, who played Davros, I think is brilliant. And for some reason they didn't get him to play it when he came back. They said they were looking to do it in a different way, and then they got somebody else to do it in exactly the same way. It struck me as weird, but there you are. Villains from the future ones. Oh, I like the ones who had wind. What were they called?
The Weeping
The
Angels.
Slitheen. I love it. That's a real villain. The Weeping Angels. Oh, come on now. David Tennant, get a grip. How do you deal with the Weeping Angels? It takes the sixth Doctor to... All you do, you don't blink, you wink. You switch eyes. You don't need to blink, you just switch eyes. If they had a proper Doctor, the Weeping Angels would have been crumbled by now.
So we just have time for 2 more questions. I'm gonna go, right in the back there. Water bottle up.
All right,
Oh, sorry. Oh, you will be my last one. I have one right here with the water bottle. Yeah.
Make it a good one. Of course they will. The BBC has finally realised something they didn't realise when Peter and I and Sylvester were doing it, is that they have the best product going. Even when I was doing it. I came over here once, and the chairman of Lionheart, who were the distributors of Doctor Who in America, said to me, hey Colin, when you go back to UK, can you tell Mike Grade, we need more Who? I said, there's 2 things you misunderstand here. One is that Mike Grade isn't the slightest interest in anything I have to say, and I'll never get to meet him. And secondly, the money that's earned, or that was true back then, went into the BBC Joey coffers and not to the programme making department. So there was no incentive to make programme. Doctor Who made more money for the BBC in the 80s than it cost to make. So any other business making widgets, if you earned more from widgets than you spent making widgets, you keep making widgets. But the BBC wasn't motivated that way then. Now, they've got a whole different group of people in there, and BBC Worldwide has suddenly realised, you know, that if Disney can do it, so can we. You know, you merchandise everything. There's so much stuff now, and they, whenever I'm on anything, they send me kind of a dozen of them, so my attic is full of stuff, which is the legacy of my daughters. But it's so much better, the merchandise now. There's little, you know, figures of doctors, and apparently the joys that mine sells out immediately because little kids want them, and it's colourful. For once, my awful costume has been a benefit because kids love it, because it's multicoloured.
Perfect, and right there, yeah.
All right, so I clip with you and one of the other doctors on YouTube discussing not being on the 50th anniversary. Is this just a big lie, or is this true? And how do you feel about being rejected from being in the 50th anniversary?
Oh, rejected, come on, bro.
How do I feel about being rejected? Well, to be honest, I never expected to be. You guys, you are fans. You're not the millions who view. You're fans. You like it. We like to be in it. But for 90% of the viewing audience, it would be confusing. Why these old men pretending that they look like what they did 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Why is this storyline contorted to accommodate them? It would be very, very difficult to do a believable story without putting in stuff about, gosh, he has been aged by the warping of time due to the... You know what I mean, don't you? I never expected them to do it, and we are not lying to you. All I can tell you is that neither Peter, nor I, nor Sylvester, nor Paul, I don't know about Tom, I haven't spoken to him, but I suspect not Tom either, because he's even older than me, are in it. I gather David Tennant's in it, with Matt Smith, and that's it. There may be other surprises, but I really don't know. And in a way, I'm relieved, because the one time someone did try to do a multi-doctor story that was in, when was it, 1989, something like that? 93, oh well, that shows what a lot of time I have. Somebody wrote a script and took it to BBC Worldwide, no, it was called Enterprises then, and they approached us all and asked us if we wanted to do the story. And I was working with John Pertwee, Sylvester McCoy and Peter Davison at the time, and we all got the script on the same day, and we were filming, remember those Stranger things that came out? We were filming kind of low-budget things together, which was great fun. Thank you. And we all said, this is ridiculous. It was a story basically for Tom Baker, and they had 4-page scenes where each of us got trapped in some vortex, and I had a scene with, Peter had a scene with the Cybermen, railing at the Cybermen. I can't remember what mine was now. It was peripheral to the story. And we all said, no, we're not doing that. Because it was a story to be written and then they pegged doctors into it. And for us to reprise our roles, it needed to be a proper good story. And they knew that Tom would not be wooed back unless he was, you know, heavily favoured. But then someone at the BBC came back from holiday and said, what's going on here? I haven't authorised this, and it was cancelled. So we didn't have to make a decision on it. But it wasn't very good. So I suppose it is possible. And of course, Big Finish have done a story. Right at the end, which comes out in November, which is very, very good indeed. So it's much easier to do on audio, because, you know, I'm quite young and curly hair, and thank goodness my voice hasn't changed yet. And that's what's so super about the Big Finish audios. We all look the same, the monsters are really scary. If someone says, that's the most beautiful girl I have ever seen in my life, each one of you will have a different picture, and each one of you is right. Whereas on television, someone says, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life, and the camera does that, and 90% of the audience go, she's not all that. Doesn't happen on audio. It's brilliant. My children leave after 3 minutes if I start talking to them. So you have been very welcoming. I love